I think we are live. Hey, how is it going? Lee Hayward here with the Total Fitness Bodybuilding video chat for Friday, April the 8th. Hopefully this is coming through loud and clear and that you can hear me and see me. And for those of you who are tuning in live right now, let me know if this is working, if this is coming through loud and clear on your end. I would much appreciate it. And the way these video chats work is I'm going to be hanging out here for the next hour, answering questions and topics of discussion that you have with regards to your fitness and nutrition, muscle building, and fat loss goals. So anything that you want to discuss with regards to exercise, with your eating habits, with your workouts, any specific challenges you're dealing with, especially when it comes to building muscle or losing fat, feel free to type those questions and topics of discussion into our chat window, and I'll do the best that I can to help you out over the course of our chat today. And let's see, who do we have joining in? We have Dan joining in. Welcome. Glad to have you tuning in. And as you tune in, let me know who you are. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you're a regular to the chat, type the letter R into the chat. Let me know that you're a regular. And if you're brand new and this is your first time tuning in, type the letter N into our chat window. Let me know that you are new. And I want to give you a special welcome if you're brand new. And we'll prioritize any questions or comments or anything that you need today. All right, let's see what we have here. All right, let's see what we got. We have Dan, we have Andrew, we have got Dario, we have, who else we got here? Let's see. Welcome. Glad to have you tuning in. So I'm just going to jump right into it now and take it away. So without further ado, let's get this show underway. Andrew's saying, he says he's currently doing a lean bulk, currently eating a surplus of 200, but sometimes I still feel hungry. Should I eat more? All right, that's a good question. And first off, how do you know you're in a surplus, right? If you're going by some online calorie calculator formula where you enter in your age, your height, your weight, and it spits out you need to eat 2,322 calories or whatever, it's just a guesstimate. That's all it is. How you actually know if you're in a surplus or a deficit or a maintenance is how your body really responds. So you need to just basically follow a set eating plan and then see how your body responds. If you're gaining weight, you're in a surplus. If you're losing weight, you're in a deficit. If you're maintaining weight, you're in maintenance. And it's not always going to be perfect. Like some days you're going to eat more than others. Some days you're going to eat a little less, but we're looking at the long-term average, right? Like don't try and nitpick it so perfectly and have it, like hitting the exact number precisely. Just focus on being in the ballpark and staying in the ballpark. That's all that really matters. So if you're still hungry and your goal is to gain weight, i.e. bulk up, then eat until you're comfortably full. But you need to do this with listening and understanding how your body works. Because if you're gaining fat, then obviously you don't want to be bulking. But you need to look at it from the bigger picture. So if you're skinny and you're lean and you're trying to fill out your frame with muscular body weight, it's okay to purposely eat more and be in a slight calorie surplus. Now, you don't need to be in a big one. Like what you're trying to achieve here is a good one. But if you're still feeling hungry, then eat more. And a good rule of thumb when your goal is to gain muscular body weight, eat until you're comfortably full. Like there's no need to be leaving the table hungry. And what you really want to focus on is eating enough to let your body grow, but not so much that you're trying to force it to grow. All right. So there's a difference because when people bulk up and they try and force themselves to eat, like they're slam back an extra 500 or an extra 1,000 calories a day or something like that, and they purposely try and force themselves to gain weight. Yeah, you gain weight, all right, but only a small percentage of that is lean mass, and then the rest is just going to spill over to excess body fat. And you don't need that. You don't want that. You just need to have a very slight calorie surplus. And in fact, for most people, if you shoot for maintenance, chances are you'll probably actually be in a surplus because very few people are spot on with their calorie consumption and calorie measurements. Like on average, people who track their calories underestimate how much they eat by as much as 50%. And even registered dietitians and nutritionists and professionals who do this for a living and are, the best of the best at tracking nutrition and understand this stuff, even they underestimate their calories. On average, between 15 to 20%, a registered dietitian will underestimate their calories. So the average person greatly underestimates them, and even the pros are known to underestimate them. So if you just strive for a true calorie maintenance, you'll probably actually provide enough to be in a slight surplus for growth. But ultimately, how you know is based on your real world results. So, Andrew, you need to, first off, just have a consistent eating plan and monitor your results. See how your body's changing. If you're seeing progress, you're eating enough to fuel your workouts, you're getting stronger, and you're slowly gaining weight. And when I say slowly, like even if you're gaining a pound or two a month, like that is still progress. Like I know it seems painfully slow, especially, people think that I'm going to bulk up and pack on like 30 pounds in 3 months or something like that. If you're packing on that much weight, it ain't lean weight, right? You're getting fat. But if you can pack on like even a pound of lean body mass per month, and you did that over the course of a year, like that's 10 to 12 pounds at the end of the year. I mean, that is huge. That is a huge gain. I mean, just imagine if you had 10 to 12 pounds of lean meat packed onto your body in the right places. That is huge. And that's the kind of progress you're looking for. So it's not this massive gains, but just looking at slow gains over time. And the thing that will let you know if you're on the right track is your energy levels and your workout performance, because you will see the strength gains and the performance in the gym improve faster than you'll actually see the changes happening in your own body. The strength comes first, the size comes after, but a bigger muscle is a stronger muscle and vice versa. So eat enough to fuel your workouts, eat enough to have strength to get through your training sessions and to actually make progress in the gym. And then rest assured that if that's happening, then the physical changes will follow up there afterwards. All righty, let's see what else we got there. Dario's joining in. What's a good resting heart rate to aim for if the goal is to maximize health and longevity? That I'd really have to look into that, because that's going to vary depending on your age. For one, it's going to vary depending on the type of training you do. Like endurance athletes and people who are trained for endurance sports have very low resting heart rates because their heart is so strong and it can pump a lot of blood with very few beats. So, I mean, sometimes they'll have very low heart rates, but I think the normal for most people is somewhere around 60 beats per minute, a beat per second, basically. But that's something you really need to look into, because I mean, like you could just simply do a Google search to see like where you fall in terms of your normal heart rate. The one that I would be more concerned with, I mean, obviously you want to have an ideal heart rate, but look at the bigger picture. Look at like your blood pressure. That's another one that you want to keep track of, as well as your heart rate, and just see how that is progressing, right? Like you want to make sure that that is staying in check and you have like normal blood pressure and normal heart rate. And as you get in better shape, that's something that should improve over time. I mean, in my case, my resting heart rate is somewhere in the mid 40s, like somewhere around 45 beats a minute is my resting heart rate. But then, of course, that will vary throughout the day. Like even just simple stuff you do throughout the day will affect your heart rate. So like if you drink a cup of coffee, that will elevate your heart rate. If you're just doing mild activity, like even just household chores, or heck, even just working on your computer, or me doing this video chat talking, this is elevating my heart rate. So that will have an impact on it. But your true resting heart rate, which ideally you want to measure like first thing in the morning, if you have a blood pressure monitor and a heart rate monitor, something like that, that would be a good benchmark to go by. But yeah, so I think 60 beats a minute is around what's considered normal for most people. But I'd have to double check that, right? Again, you could just do a quick Google search and you'd find that for yourself. But as far as health and longevity, I think another one that, like I said, you want to follow that up with is the blood pressure, because this is actually quite common for a lot of guys who are involved with bodybuilding and strength sports. Is sometimes they have elevated blood pressure, because even if you have excess weight on, even if it's excess muscle weight, sometimes that can raise your blood pressure. So you want to be careful of that. It's quite common actually to see guys who are, big burly bodybuilders, and yeah, they're big and they're strong and they're lean and everything else, and they look healthy, but sometimes they have elevated blood pressure, and that's something you definitely want to keep track of. Who else we got there? Um, Andrew's following up with his question there about the calorie surplus. He says, I tried to stay the same weight or main gain, as Greg Doucette calls it, but I gained no muscle after 7 pounds of doing that. Okay, if you haven't seen any progress in 7 months, then obviously you're under eating. You should see some progress there, right? I mean, there should be some weight gain on the scale, and if it's it's a fine line, right? I mean, you still want to eat enough to put yourself into that calorie surplus, like I said, but don't be so scared of you know under eating, afraid that you're going to put on a little bit of body fat. Because if you're a naturally skinny person, it's easier to lose body fat than it is to gain muscle. And if you did put on a little bit of fat in the process, I'm assuming it's not excessive and crazy. Once you switch gears and focus on fat loss, you should be able to easily lose that. So, like, don't limit your gains because you're too afraid to put yourself into a calorie surplus. And if you're going hungry while on a bulk, that seems like that you're too afraid to eat. It's like, don't be afraid to eat, right? Eat to fuel the machine. But like, if you need some help with this, feel free to reach out to me, because it seems like you probably have some questions. You probably need some help. So this applies to anybody watching this. If you want to discuss this stuff in more detail and you got some specific challenges that are more in depth than I can answer in a quick comment, and it really requires like a back and forth conversation, send me an email and we can chat back and forth that way. Or reach out to me through Facebook and we can chat back and forth that way. And all my information, my Facebook and my emails, down in the description below this video. We have Biz, Bizwy. I think that's how I'm going to say it. Bizwy. How to maintain muscle size during a layoff? I can't train because of a hectic schoolwork these days. All right. I want you to reevaluate that. All right. You can't train because of a hectic schedule. You probably can't train as much as you want, but you can probably still do something. And if you got time to be sitting here watching me do this video chat, you got time to do something, right? Like, don't use lack of time as an excuse. And actually, up on my blog, if you go to leehayward.com, the very first post that's there right now is one about how to fit in exercise when you're pressed for time. And even 10-minute workouts, and that's the topic in that blog post. 10-minute workouts, you can actually make progress. And at the very least, you can maintain. All right. And I know it doesn't seem like much, and you might be thinking, like, how is that possible? Read that blog post, because I'm telling you right now, something is better than nothing. And instead of thinking, I don't have time to work out because I don't have 2 hours to go to the gym or whatever. No, like, you don't need 2 hours to go to the gym to get a workout in. Like, if you got 10 minutes, heck, you could do a circuit of body weight squats and push-ups and just alternate that back and forth for 10 minutes. And I'm going to tell you, I don't care who you are, how good a shape you are. If you alternate push-ups and squats nonstop for 10 minutes, you are going to get a killer workout, right? It's going to pump you from head to toe, and you will be exhausted after just 10 minutes. Like, it doesn't take much. And if you have any home gym equipment, like some dumbbells or something like that, then you could throw in some other exercises. All right, you could do a circuit of push-ups and squats and maybe some rows and curls and shoulder presses and throw in some ab work. Literally have like a little circuit routine, and you do that for like 10 or 15 minutes. You can get a killer workout in very little time. So it's not, you got to let go of the mental block of thinking that you need this big, massive block of time to go into the gym and do this big structured workout, and give yourself permission to do mini workouts when needed. And this is what I did myself to get back in shape, after my son was born and I got the quote unquote dad bod and let myself go. This was one of the things that I did, is I had to let go of that mental block that I don't have time to work out, and then give myself permission to do these little mini workouts. And this applies for cardio as well as weight training. And how I work for me was, well, I don't have 2 hours to go to the gym, but you know what? Hey, I got 10 minutes. I got 20 minutes. I can do something, right? I used to think, well, if I don't have at least an hour, then I don't have time to work out, right? So, for example, when it came to cardio, if I didn't have at least an hour to do cardio, I don't have time to do cardio. But that's a crock of shit, right? There's a lot of times, well, okay, I don't have a full hour, but you know what? Hey, I got 20 minutes. I could still haul on my sneakers and go for a little 20-minute walk around the block. That's something. At least I got something done versus nothing done. So you got to let go of this all or nothing mindset and open up your mind and be open to being good enough, but good enough consistently. and realize that something is better than nothing, right? So once you adopt that mindset and realize that something is better than nothing, and you actually start training and living and operating from that mindset, you'll be surprised at how little exercise you can actually do and still get some noticeable progress from it, right? It doesn't have to be this extreme, perfectly planned out, structured program that's taken hours on end, right? You can get progress with very little time if you manage it properly. So again, just head on over to my blog, leehayward.com, and it's the first post there on the page right now. What's the thing on your nose? It's probably my glasses. I have no idea. What are you talking about? Craig is joining in. He says, love your content, Lee. I've heard you say good enough most of the time. I love that. I've been the all or nothing guy. Failure follows that so much. Trying to get the mindset change. Any suggestions? Trust the process. Really, it's a mental block. This all or nothing trap, it's really a mental block. And I kind of just addressed it right there for the previous question for busy. You really have to just trust the process and give yourself permission to do mini workouts, to be good enough. And even when it comes to your nutrition, like sometimes people think, well, if I can't have the perfectly calculated out macro split and this and that, then what's the point of doing anything at all? And it doesn't have to be that. It's all these little in the moment decisions. That's what shapes your progress. That's what shapes your future. It's in the moment decisions, because so many people try and over plan things and try to have the perfect plan. Whereas the perfect plan is useless. Focus on right here, right now. What the heck are you going to do? Like, instead of trying to calculate out the perfect macro split and wondering, am I going to hit my totals for the day? And what's my this and that and the other thing? What are you going to eat for your very next meal? And even if you can't eat a perfect meal, how can you make the best choice possible? Like, even if I have to go to a fast food restaurant right now, like there's nothing else available. Let's just say I'm stranded, I'm on the road, and there's nothing else available but a drive-through window. Well, I could order a grilled chicken sandwich instead of a greasy hamburger, right? Maybe I could order a side of vegetables instead of a side of French fries. Maybe I could order a salad instead. I could order a bottle of water instead of a soda pop. Like, all these little tiny in the moment decisions shape and make a difference, right? Like, whether you put cream and sugar in your coffee or you drink it black or you put artificial sweetener in it and low fat milk, like that's a little decision. It's an in the moment decision. Now, I mean, in and of itself, is it going to make a big difference? No. I mean, if you go out and eat a fatty meal today or you eat a healthy meal today, you're still going to look the same tomorrow. But what if you compound those habits over time? So every single day you eat a fatty fast food meal, or every single day you eat a healthy meal. Like, over the course of time, those little in the moment decisions start to compound. And that's where the real change happens. It's not in the moment, because in the moment it's too short. You don't see the changes. But when it starts to compound day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and then look at, okay, where am I going to be this time next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? That's when all these little decisions make a huge change. And then you look at someone who's been living bad habits for 10 years, and you look at someone who's been making good enough, but good enough consistently habits for 10 years. And it's like, holy shit, what the heck are you doing? Right? Everybody's looking at the guy who's been good enough and thinking that he's some hardcore, extreme, killing himself in the gym 2 hours a day, eating boiled chicken and broccoli. And no, it doesn't have to be that way. It's just good enough, but good enough consistently. That's all it is, and that's letting go of that all or nothing. It's really just a mental block. That's what it is. And I'm as guilty as the next person, because I used to fall for that when I was competing in bodybuilding, right? Like, I could be super disciplined in the short term, suffer it out for like a few weeks or a few months at a time. But nobody can suffer it out forever before you finally have your wits end and you run out of willpower and you say, screw it, I can't do this anymore. And then you go back to your old habits and start binge eating on junk food. But if you have this good enough, but good enough consistently mindset, and even if you screw up from time to time, like, who cares? Just start again, right? A great line that I want you to really kind of ingrain into your brain is, it's okay to screw up once, but don't screw up twice. And what I mean by that is, like, if you miss a workout today, by God, make sure you get it in tomorrow. Or if you cheat on your meal now, then get back on track for your next meal. Like, it's okay to screw up. Like, if you do screw up, who cares? Forgive, correct, continue, start again, but get back on track as soon as possible. for your very next meal or at least the very next day. Don't let those bad habits start to spiral out of control, because that's when the shit hits the fan and things really go downhill. If you let those bad habits spiral, where now you're building a habit of bad habits. Like, we want to build a habit of being good enough and having good habits most of the time. But if we do screw up, then like, don't beat yourself up over it. Forgive, correct, continue, start again. And once you get into that mindset and start to see the results from it, then it takes the stress out of this. It really does. And this is the approach that we cover within the whole Muscle After 40 Blueprint coaching program, is really going into detail with this, right? We've got a full course curriculum where we basically like reprogram all those bad habits that you've accumulated over the course of decades, and reprogram them with these good enough consistently habits. And you start to see the results slowly but steadily. And the thing is the progress you make is the progress you keep. And it's not this all or nothing yo-yo crash diet approach. It's just reprogramming. So it's the new version of you. And it's so much easier once you do this. And then that's why you see guys who've gone through the program. I mean, they lose the weight, they get in shape, they build a lean athletic physique, and then they sustain it and actually enjoy the process. You know, they enjoy it more than what they were trying to do before. And it takes the stress out of that whole all or nothing approach. All right, moving on. Second, I'm going to have me a sip of tea. Tea with Lee. Cheers. We have Kay joining in. Do you think it is possible to reach genetic potential with 3 workouts a week and 1 hour per session? I don't know, but I can tell you what is possible. It's possible to make progress with 3 workouts per week and 1 hour per session. And I would focus on that instead of getting hung up with your genetic potential. Again, this is kind of like that all or nothing mindset. Thinking, well, if I can't hit my genetic potential, what's the point of doing anything at all? Forget your genetic potential. Think of, can I be better than I am right now? And if you can be better than you are right now, then that's it. That's the goal. Like, just keep at it. And then eventually, if you stay consistent with it over the course of decades, then yeah, you probably will max out your genetic potential. But don't worry about that. Like, that's too far in the future. That is way, way too far. Like, think of right now, today. What can you do today to move yourself closer towards reaching your fitness and fat loss goals, whatever they may be? And you can absolutely make progress at 3 workouts a week. I'm going to tell you one thing. 3 workouts per week is way better than 0 workouts per week. All right. So focus on progress over perfection. What's the best workout for back? I'm really lacking in the back development. And that's from Yog Kovnaz. I think I'm pronouncing that right. The big thing when it comes to back training is it's hard to get that mind muscle connection with your back, because the back is out of sight, it's out of mind. You can't see it when you're working it. And a lot of beginners, they don't even train their back initially. Like, most people just focus on the muscles they can see. They can see their chest, they can see their abs, they can see their arms. And that's what guys focus on, right? Chest, abs, and arms, right? The beach muscles. The back, hey, I don't even see the back. There's a back there, right? Most guys don't think about the back until they realize that it's actually a weak link and they need to start training their back. So it's a lot harder to focus on it, because again, you can't see it, and it's hard to appreciate, all the different muscles and how to get that mind muscle connection when you're training it. So what I recommend with back training is lighten up the weights that you're lifting and really focusing on squeezing and contracting the muscles as you're doing the different exercises. So like, as you're doing like your rows, really focus on squeezing, like row in, pull your elbows back, retract your shoulder blades, feel the contraction in your lats. As you extend your arms out, really feel the stretch, feel the muscles stretch and contract with each repetition. Same with your overhead presses. When you're doing a lat pull down, squeeze, pull the elbows back, feel your lats contract with the weight. And then as you extend your arms back up, really feel that deep stretch as well. Right? You want to feel the stretch and contraction with each repetition. And it's easier to do this with lighter weight. So like, take what would normally be like a warm-up weight and focus on feeling the muscles. And once you can feel the muscles stretch and contract with each repetition, then gradually start to build the weight back up. A big mistake that a lot of guys make, especially with back training, is they heave and jerk. They're moving the weight, but they're not activating the muscle to its full potential. Like, when guys are doing like rows, it's almost like they're trying to start a lawnmower. They're just using momentum and heaving and jerking. And yes, they're moving the weight from point A to point B, but there's no slow and controlled mind muscle connection. Like, think again, prime example is pulling over a lawnmower. Like, you don't feel your back contract and squeeze and stretch when you're pulling over a lawnmower. It's just right? You're just moving the muscle, right? You're going through the motion without any active contraction there. Don't do that, right? You want to focus on slowing down that tempo, really feeling and controlling, having a muscular contraction, and not just using momentum to move the weight. And that's, I think, the biggest mistake that a lot of people make. And part of the problem with it is because it's so easy to use momentum with the back, right? Because again, you can use leg drive, you can heave, you can jerk, you can move it without actually contracting the muscles. And this is why a lot of times you might see someone lifting a lot of weight, but not necessarily building a lot of muscle. So you need to focus on that muscle contraction versus simply moving the weight. And that will be a big plus. Another thing that you really want to focus on with the back as well is hitting it from all the different angles, the major angles. So like, you want to make sure that there's an overhead pull, that there's a horizontal row in there, and you want to do some sort of back extension or a deadlift, so you're getting all the different areas, right? Make sure that you're hitting those. Head on over to my YouTube channel and open up the playlist tab, and there's some links there to different body part workouts. So I actually have a playlist there covering back workouts, and you can follow along to get some ideas for how you can train your back. But utilize those tips that I just shared with you there about really slowing down, feeling the muscles contract before you add weight. All right, moving on. Have you ever tried Vince Gironda's steak and egg diet? That's from J.E. I have tried variations of ketogenic diet. I mean, I've read a lot of Vince's information over the years. I even have up on my bookshelf. I've got one of these books there somewhere. I think I do anyway. Where is this? Yeah, it's one there. Vince Gironda, Legend and Myth, right up there on the bookshelf. It's basically a compilation of some of his best stuff. But yeah, Vince Gironda was big into the high protein, high fat, low carb diets, steak and egg type of diet. And I've tried it in the past, and it can work in the short term, especially if your goal is fat loss. Any type of diet where you create a calorie deficit and sustain it will work. But I find that it's not sustainable long term, and there's a lot of drawbacks to these low carb diet plans. One that I found is my energy levels would tank. Like, if I don't have carbohydrates in my system, I don't get a good workout. I don't get a good muscle pump, and I find it very hard to sustain. Another big drawback is when you're not eating vegetables and carbohydrates, very often you don't get enough fiber in your diet. And in steak and eggs, there's no fiber whatsoever. So very often constipation would end up following that. And I know whenever I would go on ketogenic diets in the past, I would go from having like 1 to 2 bowel movements a day to 1 to 2 bowel movements a week, which that ain't healthy, right? I know it's a shitty topic. It's not fun to talk about, but it's the truth, right? And that ain't healthy. So, I mean, you get a lot of gunk build up in your system, and it's just not good for the digestion. It's not good for the gut health. So even though it can work in the short term, it's not healthy and sustainable long term. And plus, look at just the cholesterol. I mean, I actually have one of my coaching students who was following a very strict carnivore diet for a while before he came on board with the Muscle After 40 blueprint. And yeah, he was following strict carnivore diet, which is basically steak and egg diet. And he lost a lot of body fat from it, So, I mean, from a physical point of view, I mean, he's seen progress, meaning the weight on the scale dropped and he lost weight. And so, I mean, he was a success story from that point of view. But his energy levels were in the toilet. He wasn't able to build lean muscle on his frame. And then when he went and got his blood work done from his doctor, his cholesterol profile was through the roof. Because, I mean, eating all that red meat and eggs and stuff like that, I mean, it's just huge amounts of cholesterol. So he wasn't in a good place healthy-wise, right? I mean, yes, he was losing body fat, but he wasn't optimizing his health. So then we got him on a nice, well-structured, well-balanced diet. 1/3 of your calories from protein, 1/3 of your calories from good complex carbohydrates and vegetables, and then 1/3 of your calories from healthy fats. And not only did his strength, energy, and muscle improve, but he improved his cholesterol and blood profile as well. So I like the balanced approach. And the general rule of thumb that I recommend for most of my coaching students, let's start with a balanced ratio, like 30 of your calories from protein, 30 of your calories from carbs and 30 of your calories from fat. And then we can manipulate it based on how your body responds. But that's a good place to go versus these extreme fluctuations, where people are blaming their fat on food groups, saying, oh, if I just cut out the carbs, then all my woes are solved. Or if I cut out the fat, then all my woes are solved. Or if you go the vegan route and cut out the animal protein, then all my woes are solved. No, it's not the food groups. Like, you need things in balance and proportion for your body to work properly. Anyway, moving on. Andrew is saying, what's he got? Another question there. Jason Blaha says you should still train when you're sore. He said, whoever told you to not train when you're sore deserves a smack in the mouth. What's your opinion on this? I am sore myself. Everything has to be taken into context. All right. There is a time and a place where it will make sense to train when mildly sore, depending on what it is you're trying to achieve. But the general rule of thumb for most people is if you're sore, it means your body hasn't fully recovered. So let it rest, recover, and grow. Because that's the process. Like, you go into the gym and you work out. Like, you're not building muscle in the gym. You're just stimulating muscle growth. It's in the rest recovery process where the body will actually grow. It's not growing when it's in the gym. So if you're always in the gym and you're always sore and you never let the recovery and growth happen, it's kind of like digging a hole and never letting it fill back up, right? You're just digging yourself into a deeper rut. Now, with that being said, there is a time and a place where you can use controlled overtraining to your advantage. You're trying to increase your work capacity and stuff like that. And sometimes you'll see athletes will purposely overtrain in the short term to try and get the super compensation in the long term. But that's more advanced strategies. And of course, you'd have to customize that to your own individual and situation. And, it's something you'd really work with one-on-one with a coach. But for the average person, the general rule of thumb is if you're sore, you want to let your body rest, recover, and grow. And where I found in my own situation and with a lot of my coaching students where they've made their best progress is working out every other day with weight training, that is. So you work out one day, take the next day off, work out the following day, take the next day off. And by having a full 48 hours of rest in between those weight training workouts, you allow your body to rest, recover, and grow in between the workouts. And you very often make better progress versus if you're always pushing yourself to the limit and never allowing that recovery and growth process to happen. Now, in between those weight training workouts, this is where you can do some active recovery exercise. So in the form of like cardio. And this is what I do personally is I do weight training one day, cardio the next. Weight training one day, cardio the next. And it alternates the stimulus that you're providing to your body because the weight training is that high intensity stimulus is breaking down muscle tissue, stress in your central nervous system, whereas the low intensity cardio is active recovery. It's helping to increase blood flow and circulation, aid with fat burning, but it's not breaking down muscle and it's not stressing the central nervous system to the same degree. So it's a very complementary form of exercise. And I refer to it as my yin and yang training system, right? So strength training one day, cardio the next. And this is a great way to stay active every day. So you're reaping the benefits of daily exercise, making it a habit, but you're also working within your body's natural recovery abilities so that you can still make progress and without suffering the drawbacks and the overtraining symptoms. But no, I would not agree with what he's saying. All right. What else we got there? We have No Name joining in. Lee, I'm suffering with a bad cold, a chesty cough. I've been off the gym for nearly a week, and I keep thinking I'm getting smaller and losing my progress, but I don't know if this is all in my head. Yeah, it could quite possibly be. I mean, like, it doesn't take long for the body to decondition. Like, even if you take a week off, and of course you're sick, which is certainly not helping the process along, you could see a small decline. I mean, one, obviously, you're not going to have the same muscle pump and muscle fullness that you would have if you're working out consistently. So it almost feels as if your muscles are a bit deflated, right? And that's normal. And of course, with your immune system down and everything else, that's not helping the process either. So in the short term, yeah, you probably are losing some muscle. But once you get back to good health again and you're able to resume training again, you will quickly regain whatever lost muscle you had. And then within a couple of weeks, you could be back to making progress again. So we're always in a phase of either gaining or losing. Like, we're never staying the same. You're always moving forward or falling behind, right? Like we're always going through that. And it's just kind of tipping the balance so that we're moving forward more than we're falling behind. Obviously, when you're sick and you're not able to train and probably not able to eat consistently or as much as you should, then that's going to be a downside, right? You're going to be falling behind during this phase. But the most important thing now is to just let your body rest, recover, and grow, and then get your immune system back up so that you can then get back to the gym and start training again. One thing that I would probably recommend in the short term, if you can, try and keep yourself active with just like general cardio, even if it's just as simple as getting outside and going for a walk, because that usually makes you feel better, getting the fresh air into your system, and just that gentle exercise and blood flow and circulation usually helps. And it very often helps with sinus congestion and everything else. I mean, I find this is what I do myself when I'm feeling under the weather. I still try to keep myself active, but it's not stressing the body and hindering the recovery process. It's just active recovery, right? Movement, and of course, getting some more blood flow and circulation and fresh air usually does help the process along. But once you get back to full recovery and you're back to your workouts again, within 2 or 3 weeks, you should be back to your old self, and then even making progress from there on. But in the short term, you will feel like shit when you're sick. That's it. And you will see your performance will suffer as well. Okay. I've heard some people say that the sun is anabolic. People from sunnier countries build muscle easier, apparently. Is this true? There actually is some truth to this. We'll unpack that statement there. And again, this one's from Andrew. The sun is the best source of natural vitamin D. And when you have adequate levels of vitamin D, it helps so many things. I mean, you feel better. It actually helps with so many functions in the body. And vitamin D is actually a steroid hormone. I mean, it's not like oh, I'm getting a suntan, so I'm on the juice. No, it's not like that. But I mean, there is anabolic properties to it, right? It is a steroid hormone. Vitamin D is, and it's so many things it has, like, just do a search for vitamin D. You'll see that it has such an impact on so many functions within the body. But you'll even see like people who participate in summertime sports, when midsummer comes around and you're getting maximum sun exposure and stuff like that, very often your physical performance will actually peak with the amount of sun exposure you're getting. And then if you're going through some off-season training or winter training, it's not the same. You don't have that same level of oomph, right, as you do in midsummer when you're getting outside and getting maximum sun exposure. So there is some truth to it for sure. I mean, obviously, one thing that you can do to help is supplementing with vitamin D. If you do live in a colder climate and you're not getting much sun exposure, that can certainly help. Supplementing with that, even looking into tanning beds and stuff like that to get some artificial sunlight can have some positive impacts as well. And it also, I mean, just not only from a performance point of view, but mental point of view, like the whole seasonal disorder thing. Like you see this sometimes, people who live in northern climates where they're not getting as much sunlight, their mood and everything else that goes down. Very often they feel depressed and low energy. And then of course, in the summertime, when there's lots of sun and they're able to enjoy it, they feel much better. So that, just as it has an impact on your mood, can have an impact on your physical performance as well. So there is some truth to that for sure. That's one of the reasons why I try to get outside as much as possible year round. Like, I mean, it's not quite the same in the wintertime, but still I try to get outside and enjoy the sun, right? As much as I can. With doing my cardio outside is my big thing, like walking, cycling, stuff like that, hiking. Yeah, absolutely. It certainly does make you feel better, and it can have physical benefits as well. Andrew's asking, Greg Doucette's maingain theory has caused so much controversy with bodybuilders. What's your opinion on maingaining? I actually understand where he's coming from with that, and I do totally agree with where Greg is coming from. The idea behind it is the old school bulk and cut approach. Very often what happens when people purposely try and bulk is, yeah, you gain weight, but a lot of that weight is excess body fat. And then when you go through the process of cutting to lose that excess body fat, when you eventually want to lean down again, a lot of times you end up losing a lot of the lean muscle that you gained along with the fat. So the end result is there's not much difference. And you would have probably made better progress, looked and felt better, and be more healthier if you had stayed lean and made leaner gains versus trying to go this big bulk and cut, bulk, cut, bulk, cut, the whole yo-yo diet thing. And I'm as guilty as anyone. Like back in my contest days, this is what I did. I used to go through the whole bulking and cutting process. And I mean, my body weight would fluctuate anywhere from 40 to 50 pounds between my off-season bulk and my pre-contest cut. And when I'd go through that, balloon up 40 plus pounds and then diet it all down again, I was pretty much always the same weight. Like I was always a light heavyweight at my peak in bodybuilding. I've never got any bigger than that. I had the goal. I wanted to be a heavyweight bodybuilder. And I remember back in 2000 and when was it? 2005 or 2006, somewhere around there, that time range. That's when I was really, really going crazy with bulking, i.e. eating a shit ton of food. And I wanted to get my weight up to 250 pounds. I actually peaked out around 242. Couldn't get any bigger than that. And I wanted to be a heavyweight bodybuilder. And then by the time I dieted all the fat off and got lean again for my next contest, I was still back down under 200 pounds again. And it didn't really make that much difference. So I went through that whole balloon up, diet down again, only to be the same, right? So I think you'd be much better off getting lean, staying lean, and then just focusing on making lean gains from there. I mean, it's much healthier and you look better and you'll feel much better. And it's a much better process than trying to purposely put on weight to gain muscle. All right. So, I mean, I'm not a fan of that bulking and cutting approach. I'm more of, keep the calories, in that slight surplus where you're eating enough to fuel your training and letting your body grow, not trying to force it to grow. Right. That's the difference. Eat enough to make sure that you're providing adequate energy so that you can train hard, recover, and not feel depleted. Right. You want to fuel the machine, but not overfuel it. Right. You want to just fuel it so that you can build lean muscle. I mean, yeah, you may put on a little bit of body fat, but it shouldn't be sloppy fat where you're ballooning up 30, 40 plus pounds and then having to lose it all again. Right. It should be very, very manageable. Like a lot of times, I wouldn't recommend anybody going more than 20 pounds over their ideal cut weight. Like that should be the upper limit for most people. Don't go through this whole bulking phase where you're purposely getting fat, because it's ultimately it slows the process down. And not only that, it also stretches your skin. Like every time you balloon up, you're stretching your skin, and then you diet down, you balloon up, and your skin's not going to have the same tightness and elasticity. And I mean, I suffer from this myself. Like I've got loose skin around my midsection now from years of bulking and cutting. Right. I mean, that's something that's never going to go away unless you get it surgically removed, which I have no intentions of doing. All right, moving on. We got Brian joining in, and Brian's one of our newer members to the Muscle After 40 program. He says, I saw a guy this morning swinging his weights around when it was blowing my mind. You never know what you're going to see at a commercial gym. I was actually having a coaching call with one of my other students today, and we were talking about this because a particular guy works out from home, and he actually was training at a commercial gym just this past week. And he realized, like, when you get out there in the real world and see what people are doing, it can be quite an eye-opener, because a lot of people live in this bubble, especially if you're online and you're following like workout videos on YouTube and you're following social media fitness influencers and stuff. Everyone thinks, well, like, hey, if you work out, then you must be using perfect form and you must have ripped six-pack abs, and everybody who works out is in killer shape. But then when you get into the real world and you get out into the gym, you realize, hey, just because you work out doesn't mean you're in awesome shape, and it doesn't mean you're using good form. And like, there's a lot there's a lot of mistakes out there, right? So yeah, it can be quite eye-opening sometimes when you get out there and just see, what people are actually doing. All right, moving on. What else we got? Vince is joining in. Opinions on training fasted. I got several opinions on that. There's pros and cons to it. From a fat loss point of view, technically you will burn more fat if you train in a fasted state, because obviously you don't have any glycogen in your system and your body will more readily utilize stored body fat for energy. The only drawback to that is sometimes it can hinder your exercise performance, and it also doesn't aid with the muscle building and recovery process because you're literally running on empty. I've done both. I've went through years of training fasted, like doing fasted cardio in the morning. I've even gone through phases of doing fasted workouts. I've even gone through phases of intermittent fasting. And you can still make progress with that approach. And it's almost like you're making progress in spite of it, not because of it. Right? Like sometimes you make progress in spite of something, not because of something. And I think that was the case in my situation because I was consistent with the workouts. I was consistent with eating healthy foods for the most part. And I was doing the intermittent fasting as a way to control my caloric intake. But these days, I've switched to more frequent feedings. And I find that the more frequent feedings, one, it helps to improve exercise performance. I feel a lot stronger when I eat and I have some food in my system to run on. And I also find that it helps to aid with the recovery process because now you have that food in your system so that when your body is breaking down muscle tissue in the gym and you're placing the stress on it, you can actually start relying on the food that's in your system to help aid that recovery process versus waiting until afterwards to eat and then having that delay time while the food is being digested and everything else. You can actually be relying on the food that you already have in your system that's pre-digested and waiting there to be utilized. So I'm a bigger fan these days of more frequent feedings and training with food in your system. But like I say, there is a time and a place where fasted training can be utilized. If you're trying to lose fat as fast as possible, there is, some merit to it. Like if you're on a special deadline, thinking like, say, like a bodybuilder who's getting ready for a competition and he's behind schedule and he needs to pick it up, you can utilize fasted training as like an advanced strategy to kind of like tip the scale in favor of fasted fat loss, but realize that you also increase the risk of some muscle loss and you will not feel as strong during your workouts, right? So, I mean, there is a bit of trade-off there, but it's another tool in the toolbox. Look at it that way, right? I'm not saying that it's good, bad, right, or wrong. It really depends on the situation. And for most people, you don't need it. Right? You can make great progress with eating frequent meals throughout the day. And this is what I would recommend for most people, because when you eat consistently throughout the day, it's easier to maintain steady blood sugar and it avoids that, where you go fasted and then your blood sugar dips and then you get this uncontrollable hunger and the temptation to binge eat later on. Like a common thing that I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm not hungry for breakfast in the morning and I go all day and I don't eat, but then in the evening I'm starving and I can't control myself. Well, the reason you're starving and can't control yourself is because your blood sugar crashed and now you'll eat anything. You're famished. Whereas if you had been eating a little bit throughout the day and kind of staying ahead of the hunger, by the time the evening rolls around, you're not famished and you can eat like a normal human being and stop when you're comfortably full and instead of having these uncontrollable cravings. So I find that that's a big advantage to more frequent feedings. But like I said, in certain situations, you can certainly utilize fasted workouts. But it's like a double-edged sword, right? For the benefits, there's also a lot of drawbacks, right? And personally, I don't utilize them myself anymore. And for my coaching students, I rarely recommend them, except in some rare exceptions. Like I say, if you're training to get ripped for something and you're on a specific deadline and we kind of need to pull out all stops, then we might utilize it in that type of situation. But for most situations, I would not recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it as a sustainable long-term solution. All right, what else we got there? We have talentless medic. Okay. Are full body workouts good for intermediate lifters 3 times a week? Yes, I love full body workouts. That's what I utilize myself. And regardless if you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced, you can utilize full body workouts. And in fact, what would make a workout beginner, intermediate, or advanced is not so much the split or how many body parts you train per session, but how hard you're actually pushing yourself during those workouts. I mean, you could do a very basic beginner's program, but if you push yourself to the limit and you're training to failure and giving it 100%, that's an advanced workout. Like it's not the exercises, the sets, and the reps. It's how much effort you're actually putting into it. And sometimes I've seen guys make actually better progress with a very simple program. Like, prime example, like sometimes you'll see powerlifters, they'll go through phases where they'll literally just squat, bench, and deadlift, and then maybe a few accessory exercises to balance things out. I mean, that's a very simple program on paper. I mean, it's nothing complicated. But if they're working their ass off and pushing the limit with those squats, benches, and deadlifts, and then the accessory exercises, they can get brutally strong with those. Like, it's you don't have to have this big complicated program with a gazillion different exercises and all these different angles and, you know, crazy set and rep patterns and stuff. Sometimes just keeping it simple and then mastering the basics, and I mean, you can make some great progress that way. In fact, when I look back at my own training, some of the most memorable times when I made some of my best gains was following very simple programs. Like prime example, like the 20 rep squat program, right? I made videos on that. If you just do a search online for Lee Hayward 20 rep squats, you'll see it. But I mean, that's a very simple total body workout that's done 3 days a week, but I made some of my best gains ever utilizing it. All right, what else we got there? We have RC joining in. He says, for cleaning barbells and cable machines, use silicone, not WD-40 or any other oil, kerosene-based lubricants. My barbell is clean and shiny, and my lat pull-down machine has a very smooth feel to it. All right. Thank you for the tip. I have to be totally honest. I do not clean the barbells at the gym. That's up to the gym owner to do that for us. But for any gym owners who are watching this now, right, do not use WD-40 on your barbells, according to Mr. RC. Again, I've never actually I've never looked into, you know, the proper way to clean a barbell before. Think of that. Like, there's always room to learn something new, but no, I've never done it. I've never, other than just wipe it down with a towel or something. I mean, anyway, moving on. Brian is asking or talking. He's saying, I've seen a lot of talk on YouTubers about fasting times and insulin ups and downs. Some recommend eating 3 times a day because eating more keeps insulin too high. Some say eat only 6 hours. The biggest thing that's going to spike your insulin, and first off, insulin spikes, assuming you're not a diabetic and this an issue, but like if you have properly functioning pancreas and your body is metabolically able to digest and process carbohydrates on its own without the assistance of, you know, medication and stuff like that, the biggest impact is not going to be so much the timing but the volume. All right, if you eat small frequent feedings throughout the day, that's not going to have as big of an insulin spike as if you have 3 massive feedings per day or 1 massive feeding per day. Like, you see some guys that say, well, I eat 1 meal a day. Well, if you're eating 1 massive meal a day, you're getting a massive dump of insulin into your body when you eat that massive meal. Whereas if you're eating, you know, 4 or 5 smaller meals per day, then you're getting 4 or 5 smaller spikes. So it's really the volume of food and the volume of carbohydrates that's going to have the biggest impact, not so much the frequency. But again, that's a can of worms there, because there's so many variables that need to come into play here, right? You know, like, what is it you're training for? I mean, what's your situation like? If I was talking to a diabetic, then we would be having a different conversation, you know, and, you know, of course, someone who's using insulin and medication to try and control insulin, like that can be very complex. And I've got some of my coaching students who are diabetics, and it really creates a lot of extra challenges that people who have properly functioning metabolisms don't have to deal with. That's for sure. How long does it take you to do a full body workout? In my case, my workouts usually last about an hour and a half. That's standard for me. And that usually includes warm up and the weight training. And then I do a bit of stretching afterwards. But on average, about an hour and a half is a typical gym session. Sometimes it might be a little more. Sometimes it might be a little less, but that's in the ballpark. Arrange, or I think that's how I pronounce it, Anurag. How do you reduce love handles? I lift a lot of heavy weights, but I'm unable to focus on love handles. Any suggestions? Diet and cardio, right? Love handles is just excess body fat, and you lose love handle fat the same as you love fat from anywhere. And simply lifting heavy weights is not the best way to lose body fat. I mean, it can help indirectly because the more muscle you have on your frame, the faster your metabolism is going to be and the more calories you're going to burn throughout the day. But to truly get into a good fat burning mode, that you need to focus on your nutrition. That's the biggest piece. That's like 80% of fat loss is the nutrition. Like, I don't care how hard you work out or whatever. If you're eating too much, you're not going to burn body fat. Like, you can't out train a poor diet. So get your nutrition in check, and then of course supplement that with cardio, because cardio is the biggest calorie burner. You'll burn more calories doing cardio than you will doing weight training. Right? I know a lot of people don't think that's the case, but it's true. Like, on average, when you do weight training workouts, you'll burn maybe 10 calories a set. Like, that's kind of like a general rule of thumb. Now, I mean, it may be a little more, a little less, depending on the exercise and how big you are, but a ballpark guesstimate is 10 calories per set. So if you do 20 sets per workout, you just burn 200 calories. Whereas if you did an hour of cardio, even if it's low intensity cardio, I mean, you could easily burn like 500 calories in an hour. Now, of course, that'll vary as well, depending on the intensity and the body size and everything else. But bottom line, you'll burn more calories doing an hour of cardio than you will doing an hour of weight training, because the cardio is nonstop movement, whereas the weight training is just stop, go. And there's a lot more stop than there is go. But yeah, if you need help with that, feel free to send me an email. Like, we can sit down and discuss, do a fitness and nutrition audit of what it is you're currently doing, brainstorm some ideas and action plans, and just see if we can come up with a fat loss program that'll help you to lose those love handles and get yourself back in shape. So send me an email. My email address is in the description below. We can chat about it. All right. No name saying, thanks, Lee. I have another question. I have a question about free weights versus machines. For example, is it that much more beneficial to do an incline chest press with free weights compared to a machine where I can lift more? That's kind of like 6 to 1, half a dozen of the other, because there are benefits to both free weights and machines. From a true muscle performance point of view, the free weights kind of have an edge, because when you're doing the exercise, you engage more stabilizer muscles, and it puts your body in a more three-dimensional environment where you have to balance and support the weight. Whereas a machine exercise is on that fixed path. You basically just have to push against the resistance, and the machine does the balancing for you. There's pros and cons to both. The machine is generally easier to learn. It's more beneficial for a beginner who doesn't have the motor skills to balance the free weights. And it's safer if anybody's working around injuries. Sometimes the machine can be a better variation to do. But when it comes to pure functional strength, the free weights do have the edge in that sense. I like to use a combination of both. I will utilize free weights and machines in my workouts, and I'll vary them, depending on how I'm feeling and what it is that I'm trying to focus on. All right. So think of the one thing I would recommend first off is look at the bigger picture, right? Consistency over intensity is the first thing. So, I mean, anything you do consistently is better than something that you're not doing consistently. So focus on that first. Once you have the consistency down pat, so I mean, you're going to the gym on a regular basis, you're eating properly, you're getting adequate sleep, like you have all the boxes checked, right? Like you're doing everything right. Then we can start getting into the nitty gritty details of, okay, how can we optimize things? How can we get more muscle stimulation for the volume of work that you're putting in? And that's where sometimes free weights can help in certain situations. But then there's also other situations where the machines have the edge, because with a free weight, one, you have to lift it against gravity, whereas a machine, depending on the angle of the machine, you can work in different angles and different ranges of motion that may not be possible with free weights. And sometimes with machine exercises, you get a more consistent strength curve throughout the range of motion. Like, I'll give you an example of think of like a pec deck fly or a cable crossover fly versus a dumbbell fly. With the dumbbells, you're lifting against gravity. So like when you have the dumbbells extended out to your sides, that's where the majority of the tension is, because that's where the leverage, you're in the weakest leverage position and the most tensions on the muscles, joints, and ligaments in that fully stretched position. But as you bring the weights up, there's less and less tension, and you actually get to the point where you can kind of rest at the top, because it's your joints are supporting the weight, not your muscles. Whereas if you're using cables or a machine fly, there's tension right from the start all the way to the top, and there's consistent tension throughout the entire range of motion. So you'll actually get more muscle stimulation from a cable or a machine in that situation than you would in the free weights. So again, it depends on the exercise. It depends on the situation. So there's don't look at it as like right, wrong, good, bad. It's like think bigger and think of like what exercise and what's the situation that we're utilizing it for. Right? There's benefits to both. Neil is joining in saying good morning. If it's good morning, then you must be over in Australia or New Zealand or somewhere in that neck of the woods, because it's good evening over here. But good morning to you, Neil. So what are your thoughts about different grips for pulling exercises, such as a normal grip, a pistol grip, a hook grip, and a false grip, etc.? The different grips will engage different muscles. You'll work the muscles from different angles. So like, let's just say we're doing a lat pull down. If you do an overhand grip lat pull down versus an underhand grip, or if you have a parallel grip or whatever, each grip and hand position will pull on the muscles in different positions and will provide unique muscle stimulation. Same applies with pressing exercises as well. I mean, give you a prime example. Like if you do a tricep push down with a flat bar or a rope attachment, they'll feel totally different. You'll get a different type of muscle contraction. Even your strength will vary. Like you'll be weaker with a rope with the hands in that position than you would be with a flat bar attachment. A dumbbell curl feels different than a barbell curl because, again, the grip is in different positions. So, yeah, the different grips activate the muscles from different positions. And, I mean, again, there's pros and cons to both, right? So, generally, over the course of my training, I will vary it up, right? I'll utilize different handles and different grips and different positions for a lot of my exercises. But the big one, focus on what feels the best for you. Like if there's a certain grip or hand position that just does not feel right, then don't use it. Use one that feels more comfortable. But from the ones that do feel comfortable, then you can vary them. Right. But yeah, it does certainly have a big impact on your performance, and also from a safety point of view as well. Like you mentioned, there are the false grip, which is basically having the thumb on the same side as the fingers. That's great for machine exercises. I wouldn't recommend it for a barbell exercise, especially like a barbell bench press, because the risk of having the barbell roll out of your hands is great. Think of they call it the suicide grip, and they call it that for a reason, because like if you're doing a bench press with a false grip and that barbell starts to roll, there's nothing stopping that from literally rolling right out of your hands and then coming down, crushing your chest and rib cage. And I've seen guys, especially if they're pushing like a max effort bench press, and they start to struggle and move and twist or whatever, the barbell starts to roll, and then you got a fully loaded barbell just coming crashing down on your chest and rib cage. And I've known guys who've done a lot of damage, like broke ribs and really set themselves back. So a thumb grip prevents the barbell from rolling. So that would be a much safer variation for a barbell in terms of a barbell bench press. But when it comes to machines, that you could use a false grip for machine press. So the false grip actually takes some of the stress out of the shoulder joint. As simple as that is, just simply having your thumb on the same side as your fingers can actually take some of the stress out of the shoulder joint. And it does activate the muscle slightly differently. You will get probably a bit more tricep engagement and less shoulder strain with a false grip. So when I'm doing a chest press on a machine, very often I will actually utilize the false grip. But if I'm using a barbell or dumbbells, then I always make sure to use a thumb grip just for the safety aspect. So there's pros and cons to both, right? Like it's, again, it's like the question before, free weights versus machines. And it's not one is right, wrong, good or bad. It's, it really depends on an individual situation and an individual exercise situation. All right. John is saying, why on a low carb diet you can't eat as much calories for muscle size? Well, I can't. Full as a bull, I feel. What? Let me read that again. Why on a low carb diet you can't eat as much calories for muscle size? Well, I can't. Full as a bull, I feel. First off, a low carb diet isn't the optimal way to build muscle. That's generally a fat loss strategy. People will cut their carbs to, get their calories low, deplete their glycogen, and tap into burning stored body fat. If your goal is to build muscle, you want carbohydrates in your system because that's going to fill your muscles with glycogen. It's going to give you that high octane energy to fuel your workouts. So, low carb is a fat loss strategy. It's not a muscle building strategy. You'll build much more muscle and have more strength if you have adequate carbohydrates. The general rule of thumb, like if you're currently eating low carbs now and you're finding it is not working for you, try eating a balanced diet, like 1/3 of your calories from protein, 1/3 from carbs, and 1/3 from fat. And as simple as that is, it's amazing how well it works. Like it took me years of trial and error to come to this. It really did. Because I went through the whole, like back in the day when I started working out, the whole mantra in the diet trend, like back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was fat made you fat. So as long as you didn't eat dietary fat, you couldn't get fat. That's the way people thought. So everything was high carb, low fat. And then that didn't work as well, right? Obesity rates started to skyrocket and everything else. And then people say, well, it's not the fat that's making people fat, it's the carbs. So we switched tables. Then it was the big trend was low carb, high fat. And this is when like the Atkins diet was really popular and a whole bunch of the other ketogenic diet variations were really coming mainstream. So everybody's going on the keto kick. And, that worked from a fat loss point of view, but there had a lot of drawbacks. Again, it's hard to sustain. A lot of people were losing muscle from it and everything else. And it's just not the optimal solution. And then, we're starting to see like in the early days of Netflix, right? A lot of the pro-vegan documentaries were saying, well, it's not the fat that's making people fat. It's not the carbs that's making people fat. It's that pesky old animal protein. So we went full circle. We went from fat was the enemy to carbs are the enemy. And now it's animal protein is the enemy. So get rid of that animal protein. And then you see people following that. And then that's got a whole slew of issues. So don't blame your dietary woes or your poor physical performance on macronutrients. Like it's not the carbs, it's not the fat, it's not the protein. You need all these three in the right amounts. So how about instead of trying to go low carb, low fat, low protein or whatever, like eat a freaking balance and just keep your calories under control. So 1/3 of your calories from protein, 1/3 from carbs, 1/3 from fat, and then adjust the totals based on what it is you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to achieve a weight gain, i.e. lean bulk, make sure you're in a slight surplus. If you're trying to achieve a fat loss, then make sure you're in a slight deficit. But keep the calories and macros in ratio. Because when you have a well-balanced diet, it's so much more sustainable and so much easier to follow. Like a lot of the dietary woes that people say, like, oh, I feel low blood sugar, I feel weak, I can't get a pump, or I feel lightheaded, I feel dizzy, I feel irritable, I feel hangry. A lot of it, it's not from the diet per se. It's because you're out of whack. Like if you go low carb, for example, your brain runs on glucose. So if you're not providing enough glucose for your brain to function optimally, you're going to have brain fog. You're not going to be able to think straight. You're going to feel irritable. I mean, you're not going to be able to get a pump in the gym, right? So, I mean, that's all the drawbacks of low carb diets, right? I mean, I personally hate them. Not only that, when you don't eat enough carbs, it's hard to get enough fiber in your diet. So very often you're not going to the toilet as regularly. So, I mean, then you're constipated and you're bound up. So you have brain fog, you're constipated, you're hungry, you're irritable, you're weak. Like, no wonder people hate going on a freaking diet. But if you eat in balance and proportion so that you have adequate protein, you have adequate carbs, you have adequate fat, and everything is in balance, it's so much sustainable. Like your body works and it doesn't go through the ups and downs and mood swings and all the other crap that so many people experience when they're on a diet. So keep things in balance and proportion, and then just adjust your calorie intake based on your energy needs and your goals. Right? It's so simple, but again, sometimes simple is what's the saying? Like common sense isn't all that common. But that's my advice. If you're struggling to build muscle on a low carb diet, that's probably why. All right, guys, I'm going to get ready and clue this up very shortly because, one, I've been doing it for over an hour. Once I get the gift of gab going, I don't shut up. So there's a few other questions there. I'm just going to see what else we got there. What's the best technique for lateral raises? That's from Callum. I actually have a video. Just do a search, YouTube video search, Lee Hayward side lateral raises, and you'll see it. And I go into detail breaking down the technique for that. Got Martin's there. He says, thanks for the great content, which you always provide. Question: what are the top 5 most frequent mistakes or misconceptions related to fitness which you've noticed from your coaching students? Oh, geez, limit to just 5. I'll bang them out as quick as I can. I think blaming your dietary woes on macronutrients, thinking that, hey, I need to go low carb or low fat or low protein or whatever. It ain't the macros. Like, keep it in balance and proportion, then adjust the calories accordingly. So thinking that you need to go low carb, or low carb is the most common one, but I also have some people who come to me like who are vegetarians and vegans, and they're blaming their problems on the animal protein and all that. But again, you want your macros in balance. So that's mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 would probably be having too high of expectations, thinking that, hey, I'm going to go on some crazy cutting diet and I'm going to lose 30 pounds in 30 days and get shredded. No, it's not sustainable, right? Fitness takes time, but the thing is if you do it the right way, yes, it's a slower process, but the slow progress is progress that you can keep and sustain. So the sustainable over the all or nothing trap, that would be another big mistake. What else would there be? Thinking that you're burning more calories from weight training than you are from cardio, right? Weight training is important, absolutely, but you will burn more calories from cardio. So if fat burning is one of your goals, freaking add in some cardio. I mean, it makes the process a lot easier. I can tell you from personal experience, when I've gotten my leanest is when I've done the most cardio, right? I mean, it certainly helps. What's another one? I don't know what number we're at there now. Is that 3? What else can I add in there? Biggest mistakes. Thinking that you don't have time to work out. That's another one. Like, a lot of people, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. You've got time. You just got to make time. Realize something is better than nothing. And even if you take advantage of those little opportunities you have throughout the day, like if you got time to be watching a YouTube video like this, you got time to work out. If you got time to watch a show on Netflix, you got time to work out. Like, there's always time for something. Something is better than nothing. If you can do 10 minutes, right? 10 minutes is better than no minutes. And very often what you can do is even compound little mini blocks of exercise throughout the day. So maybe you got 10 minutes in the morning, you got 10 minutes on your lunch break, and 10 minutes when you come home from work, 10 minutes before you go to bed. Like, if you did a little 10-minute workout in each of those times, you would be able to make amazing progress without taking a large chunk of time out of your day. Right? Take advantage of all these little opportunities you can squeeze in some exercise. What's another big misconception? I'll throw in one more. So many I could throw in. What's a big one? Brain farting here. Now I'm trying to think. Probably over relying on thinking like supplements are the answer. Like, a lot of times people say, well, what's the best fat burner? What's the best muscle builder? Like, what's the best supplements? Like, for the most part, supplements are, I'm not saying that they're not helpful, but when you get into the true bodybuilding supplements, like the stuff that would be advertised in like a bodybuilding and fitness magazine, a lot of times they're selling a ton of sizzle for every ounce of steak, if you know what I mean. And like, I don't take any fat burner supplements. Like, I don't go to GNC and say, hey, what's the latest and greatest fat burner? Like, I don't take them. I don't have any fat burner supplements. Or what's the greatest muscle builder, or what's the, I don't have any of those. The only supplements that I take are supplements that are going to help to improve my overall health and fitness. Like, making sure that I'm getting adequate vitamins and minerals to prevent any deficiencies, making sure that I'm getting adequate essential fatty acids in the form of high potency fish oils, supplementing with protein powder to make sure that I meet my protein intake needs, supplementing with greens powder to make sure that I meet my vegetable needs. So I supplement for health and fitness, but I don't go looking for supplements for a body composition point of view, like thinking, okay, fat burners are going to help me lose fat, or muscle builders are going to help me build muscle. Because for the most part, it's a lot of overhype, and for what it is, it's not going to make a big difference. The big difference that's going to have an impact is, again, the diet and the exercise and the lifestyle. The supplements, if anything, it's just a crutch to help the process along. All right, moving on. We have Mr. War Gods. Lee, I'm 51 years old. I'm not able to take all the protein and test boosters I'm plant-based. How can I rip up? The easiest thing to do is send me a message and we can chat. Right? That's the easiest thing to do. We can probably do a overview of your current situation and everything else and see what you can come up with in terms of action plans. But if you are a plant-based eater, you're going to need to supplement your diet with protein in order to get adequate protein, because it's hard enough to get adequate protein if you're eating a mixed diet. If you're only eating a plant-based diet, it makes it extra hard, right? Like there's only so much beans and tofu you can chow down, and even then you're still not going to get enough, right? Like you'll need to supplement your diet with protein and amino acids to help meet the protein intake requirements for sure. And that's a common issue for a lot of plant-based dieters, and that's one of the things they struggle with. Like I'll be totally honest with you. I went plant-based myself. Like several years back, after watching all the pro-vegan documentaries on Netflix and stuff like that, my wife and I, we went vegan. We actually did it for 6 months. And hardcore. Like, I mean, I stuck it out. I said, I'm going to make this work, because I was committed to giving this an honest effort. And I tried it, and I couldn't make it work. I ended up losing muscle. My strength and energy went down the toilet. I mean, it just felt like someone was letting the air out of a balloon. Like I was losing weight and actually gaining fat at the same time, right? So my body composition was going in the wrong direction. I'd work out in the gym, and even though I was eating a ton of carbohydrates, I couldn't get a pump. Like I'd go through a workout and I just felt flat. Like there was nothing there. And gradually, I mean, after 6 months, I just said, you know what? I'm going to start adding in some protein powder to see how I feel. Started adding in protein powder, started to feel a bit better. I said, oh, well, maybe I'll go, instead of vegan, I'll go vegetarian, right? So now I said, okay, I'll add in the dairy and the eggs, started to feel a bit better. And I said, well, maybe I'll go pescatarian. So I added in the dairy and the eggs, and then added some fish as well. Started to feel better, actually started to make better progress. And then I said, well, screw it. I'm going back to full-on mixed diet. So I started eating meat and chicken and fish and eggs and dairy and everything, as well as lots of protein and vegetables. So my diet is now protein and veggies. Like that's the foundation. Every meal is protein and veggies. And I feel fantastic. I've got strength and energy, and I feel healthier than ever. And I found that when you try and cut out the different food groups, like I mentioned before, if you go really low carb, you're going to suffer. If you go really low fat, you're going to suffer. If you go really low protein, you're going to suffer. But if you keep it all in balance and proportion, your body just freaking works. Like, because your body needs protein, right? Like, I mean, I don't know what your reason for being plant-based is. I mean, if it's ethical and you're trying to save the world, okay, I can understand it. But if it's for health, the optimal health is to have a mixed diet, right? Because, I mean, low protein is not healthy. Your body needs protein, and the best digestible protein actually comes from animal sources. In fact, if you're trying to meet all your protein intake from plant-based sources, you would actually need more protein, because those are not as complete in the amino acids. So you would actually need higher amounts of protein from plant sources, which makes it even harder to get. So it's really a catch-22. And I mean, I tried to make it work with a plant-based diet, and I couldn't do it. Just could not do it. That's why I went back to eating a mixed diet. And that's what works best for me, and that's what works best for my coaching students. So if you really are dead set on making it work, then the best thing to do is find some plant-based bodybuilders who are making it work and find out what the heck they're doing. Because like I said, I tried it myself and I couldn't make it work. But if who knows, there's probably some people out there who can. Neil's saying thanks. Have a great weekend. Thanks, Neil. Take care. Andre is saying, do I need to use whey protein to gain muscle, or can I just eat natural foods? You need to meet your adequate protein intake needs. And the general rule of thumb is 1 gram of protein per pound of target body weight per day. That's what I recommend. So whatever your goal weight is, let's just say you want to weigh 175 pounds, then you want to eat 175 grams of protein per day. Would cover your bases. So 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight. Now, whether you get that from solid food, whether you get that from supplements, whether you get that from a combination of food and supplements, it really doesn't matter as long as you're getting it. Now, from a practical point of view, it's a lot easier to get that volume of protein if you include supplements into your diet. I personally do that. I will use solid food most of the time, and then I'll add in protein powder to make up the difference. So I use a combination of both. And from a practical point of view, protein powder is a lot more convenient. It's a lot cheaper, and it can actually be a lot tastier because you can take regular food that's not high in protein and make it high protein. Like I can make a bowl of oatmeal, throw in a scoop of protein powder with it. Now I have high protein oatmeal. So something that would normally be a low protein meal, i.e. just a plain bowl of oatmeal, can all of a sudden be a high protein meal. Or I can have a blender smoothie. Like I can mix up like frozen berries and frozen fruit and add a scoop of protein powder with it. And now I have a high protein blender smoothie. So something that would normally be very low protein, just blended up fruit, now is all of a sudden high protein. So protein powder is very versatile, and you can make low protein food options, high protein options, and help to meet your protein intake needs. And plus it tastes good. So I utilize both solid food and natural and protein powder. What else we got there? Thanks, Lee. One of my personal mistakes was that I tried to be perfect with my food and gym. When I skipped the gym session or have a cheat meal, I felt bad and demotivated, so I was giving up quite frequently. That's basically the all or nothing trap. And that's from Martin. And I think he was the one who asked about the 5 mistakes. And that is the all or nothing trap, Martin. I think we could probably put that as like the biggest mistake that people would make, thinking that, hey, if I can't be perfect, then what's the point of doing anything at all? If I can't have the perfect diet, then what's the point of even working out? If I can't work out, what's the point of eating healthy? And then you just fall off the rails, because then it's like, I ate a bad meal. Oh, screw it. I'm not going to work out today because I ate a bad meal. Or, I didn't work out. So what's the point of eating healthy if I didn't work out? Right? You're looking at this all or nothing, whereas something is better than nothing. So even if you can't eat a healthy meal, does that mean you can't work out? No, to still work out, like do something. Or when it comes to your nutrition, like, okay, maybe it's not a perfect meal, but you could make it a better meal. Like you're at McDonald's, right? And you order, instead of having a bacon cheeseburger, you order a grilled chicken burger. Instead of ordering a side of fries, you order a side salad. Like you can make better choices even at McDonald's, right? Like you can always do something that's moving you in the right direction. Like there's always a better choice. And even if you were in a really shitty situation and there was just junk food available, well, you still have the option to control how much of that junk food you eat. Maybe you just eat smaller portions of that. Like there's always an option to make it a little bit better. And if you operate from that mindset of something is better than nothing, and like, how can I make the best in the moment? Right? Take the situation I'm in right now and make the best of that situation. That will move you in the right direction. And that is so powerful, because we're never going to be in a perfect situation all the time. There's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be hiccups. Like stuff is going to happen, right? We could have another pandemic and the gyms get closed down again, and the shit hits the fan and whatever. Like there's always going to be challenges, but like, can you make the best of the challenges that life throws at you? And if you can still make progress. So yeah, that escaping the all or nothing mentality is probably the biggest mistake people make. All right, guys, I'm going to clue it up. Again, we've been going way over an hour. I always say I'm going to do it for an hour, and I go way longer. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, chat. Hopefully you got some value from it. And if you would like to discuss anything further based on what we covered here today, or maybe you've got some questions that I didn't cover, feel free to reach out to me. You can send me an email. You can send me a message through Facebook, chat to me that way. And we can, chat and have a brainstorm some ideas and action steps to help you move you in the right direction towards reaching your own fitness goals. So if you want help, just open up the description below. I've got my contact information. Feel free to reach out. All right, guys, have yourself a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you next Friday, same time, same place. We'll be going live at 5 p.m. Eastern time, that is. Take care. Over and out.